Friesen. Reporting tonight, Eric Sorensen.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took part in a NATO leaders summit in Spain today that made history. NATO countries, including Canada, have agreed to admit Sweden and Finland into the military alliance. It is the most significant expansion of NATO in a generation and a major setback for Russia's goal of containing NATO's power. Russia ostensibly invaded Ukraine to keep NATO from expanding on Russia's doorstep. But the invasion has now prompted Sweden and, most significantly, Finland to join NATO, extending the alliance along all of Finland's border with Russia, more than 1,300 kilometers. It not only establishes a much longer military front directly facing Russia, but bolsters NATO's strategic advantage by almost encircling the Baltic Sea. So NATO is taking a new, tougher stance on Russia, and for the first time, it's identifying the potential security threat from China. Our chief political correspondent, David Aiken, has tonight's top story from Madrid.
It's not an adversary, but of course we need to take into account the consequences of our security when we see China investing heavily in new, modern military capabilities, long-range missiles, nuclear weapons.
NATO has not updated its strategic concept since 2010. And that last one, it did not even mention Russia as a threat. That has now changed.
Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, we all know, is the biggest threat to our security since World War II.
As he did 2 days ago at the G7, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky joined NATO leaders by video conference for a closed-door discussion on war strategy. And while NATO forces will not engage directly in combat on Ukrainian soil, NATO leaders vowed to stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. U.S. President Joe Biden said the U.S. would deploy more naval assets here in Spain, new air defenses in Italy and Germany, and new army units in Romania and Poland.
We're going to make sure that NATO is ready to meet threats from all directions.
This is the biggest overhaul of our collective defense since the end of the Cold War.
As for Canada, it agreed to lead and command an enlarged NATO force in Latvia.
We're stepping up our contributions to NATO in a big way so we can keep Canadians safe and keep doing our part on the world stage.
Canada has been in charge of a battle group of about 3,000 in Latvia since 2016. That group
for your leadership. Transatlantic unity has been and will continue to be the greatest strength in our response to Russia. Transatlantic security. We're standing as one to support Ukraine and to enhance our own deterrence and defense capabilities. And as I said before the war started, if Putin attacked Ukraine, the United States would...
They arrived in Europe as Europe faces war. The leaders of the world's largest military alliance today celebrated what they see as a coalition renewed.
The United States and our allies, we're going to step up. We're stepping up. We're proving that NATO is more needed now than it ever has been.
In a meeting with Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, President Biden announced new U.S. military deployments, including more F-35s to the U.K., more ships to Spain, additional air defenses to Germany and Italy, a brigade combat team of more than 3,000 troops to Romania, and in Poland, for the first time since the Cold War, the U.S. will create a permanent U.S. base in Eastern Europe, the Army 5th Corps Forward Headquarters.
People scoff at having headquarters, but it's the headquarters which allow you to bring in and add things, whether it's U.S. or allies or joint forces.
Ben Hodges is the former commander of...
All of the frozen conflicts are in the Black Sea region, from Georgia to Transnistria. Russia has established sort of a new Iron Curtain between NATO and non-NATO countries. Romania is the center of gravity for us in the Black Sea region.
Well, at that NATO summit, members are expected to formally invite Finland and Sweden to join their ranks. Turkey had initially opposed their bid to join, but now agreed to support it, saying it had gotten the concessions it wanted.
He asked me to take nude selfies and send them.
He ruled millions of hearts.
I set aside my own logic.
On day one of what has been described as one of NATO's most important summits in years, a major breakthrough. Turkey dramatically dropped its opposition to Finland and Sweden becoming members of the military alliance. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had blocked the Nordic countries' membership bids because of what Ankara perceived as their support for Kurdish militant groups it designates as terrorists. But a meeting between NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg and leaders of the three countries at the start of the summit in Madrid quickly bore fruit.
In NATO, we have always shown that whatever our differences, we can always sit down, find common ground, and resolve any issues. NATO's open door policy has been an historic success. Welcoming Finland and Sweden into the alliance will make them safer, NATO stronger, and the Euro-Atlantic area more secure.
The countries signed a joint memorandum on their common security after the meeting. Finland's and Sweden's NATO membership now appears to be a formality. It's a big boost at the start of a gathering which NATO will use to set out its strategic agenda for the next decade.